Un'ora, vai, vai.
Sì, un attimo solo. Allora, accomodatevi sopra. Un attimo solo, 2 minuti. Che sale. Accomodatevi tutte e due sopra. Ok? E poi okay. Sì, là dietro eventualmente. Sì, e poi avviene. Noi iniziamo, là c'è là c'è comunque il. Ok, allora sediamoci e iniziamo. Scusate, in sala vi sedete? Tutti quanti, grazie. Siediti, Beppe. No, vabbè, ti metti dove vuoi tu. No, questo lascialo a me. No, perché è meglio là. No, ma arriva. No, perché lui si deve collegare il microfono, ok? Ok. E allora, siediti, Beppe. Ok. Marco, dai, dammi il via. Buongiorno a tutti, buongiorno a tutte le persone che sono presenti in sala.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning to our speakers. of the event Tradition, Innovation and Generativity, which the municipality of Caltanissetta is pursuing within the MDNet Interreg international project involving 12 partners and 8 countries. It's a Mediterranean diet project, the only Interreg project on Mediterranean diet, and we'll hear more about this in the afternoon. I'd like to thank you for joining us from home, joining us online through Facebook and YouTube, etc. This morning we're going, and also this afternoon, we're going to deal with how to build a Mediterranean lifestyle. It's the last day, but we're going to cover the starting point because we cannot create a big community of Mediterranean lifestyle unless one has training activities in place and unless one has built a Mediterranean lifestyle. We think this is the most relevant topic. We will going to hear a lot from the institutions and also from other entities. We will have Mr. Nene Mangiacavalli, the president of the University Consortium of Agrigento, Mr. Walter Tesauro, who's the president of the University Consortium of Caltanissetta, has not yet joined us. And then we will have Mr. Pinuccio Lavina, the president of the University Consortium of Ragusa. We're also waiting for Mrs. Lina Scalisi from, she's the president of the Academy of Fine Arts in Catania. Then we have the rector of the University of the I'm sorry, there is no connection at the moment. We will have Professor Giovanni Pugliesi, the rector of the Core University in Enna, and then the rector of the University of Palermo, Professor Massimo Midiri, and the Regional Ministry for Education, Honorable Roberto Lagalla. Then we will have as speakers Professor Inglese, Professor Trapani, Professor Perulla, and Professor Sella, who's the coordinator of the Interdiocese Network of New Lifestyles. And then we will have an expert from EDMed, the Institute for the Promotion of Mediterranean Diet, Francesca Cerami, and Dr. Pepe De Santis from Medea. Before handing it over to our speakers, I will give you some information concerning the park so that you can all have the same information as a starting point. The park is an economic project to promote good businesses. In Sicily, there has been a dual depopulation from the inland of Sicily, central Sicily, and also from the metropolitan areas. Some statistics: in the last 10 years, we lost 400,000 Sicilian inhabitants who left our region, but this number is bound to increase due to the fact that many left their residence but went to work in Italy, elsewhere in Italy and abroad. And then in the Caltanissetta area, we experienced a number of crises. First of all, a crisis in the historical rural economy, then a mining crisis, an oil crisis, and then the building crisis and the crisis of industrial farming in the period after the Second World War. So something has to change. This is our starting point. The park promotes a new model of development starting from central Sicily, involving the whole of our region, the south of Italy, and Italy as a whole, relying on a more sustainable human lifestyle, more community-based. It's inspired by the principles of a healthy mind and a healthy body, eating the right healthy food. Strategically speaking, the park is supposed to be an integrated system with slow trails, with local landscapes, Mediterranean cuisine, and also outdoor activities, outdoor playing activities, and castles, as well as sites where all the products of the Mediterranean diet can be sold, products made by our farmers. The park is an area which involves the whole of central Sicily, a broad area, 10,000 square kilometers, including from 100 to 150 municipalities involving 1.5 million people. It's an integrated partnership relying on three pillars. First of all, businesses, then the public sector, and the third sector. On day one, we had the excellent presentation by Professor Stefano Zamagni, who is an expert in civil economy. This is our great community of the Mediterranean lifestyle, which has discussed a lot during these past days. Integral ecology is a core dimension of the park. We have to solve a problem of income and also other problems of the businesses through integral ecology, restoring agriculture first and foremost. On day one, we had the on day two, we had the presentation by Professor Butera. Spiritually, the park is based on the UNESCO decisions, recognizing the Mediterranean lifestyle as part of the heritage of the UNESCO heritage, based on dieta, which means lifestyle in Greek. This is implemented in the park. And then the Laudato Si encyclical by Pope Francis. I'd like to ask all children and students to read it. And then the Terra Madre movement, inspired by Carlo Petrini. We're using lots of tools. We are involving all professionals and stakeholders in our region. We're also trying to focus on the top quality products of our area, and we have to resort to also financial means. We often refer to the Funds for Development, the CIS, that Molise has also used. Mr. Notar Tommaso, the mayor of Campo di Pietra in Molise, is the project leader of a big project involving 200 million euros. We also have to pay attention to the National Recovery and Resilience Plan for next year. Apart from the partnership network and apart from networking, we have to find a consistent solution in terms of governance. We have to build a legal entity for this organization, a sort of legal umbrella with the municipality of Caltanissetta, with its strategic council, has promoted this initiative. Thanks to a vision of the municipality, we've very much promoted the initiative of the park, but today we need a common house, a common umbrella under which we can all work. And we have to find this legal entity. We are trying to move stepwise, going from a simple or complex association, and then the participatory foundation, which allows the three pillars of the of our partnership, the private sector, the public sector, and the third sector to be on an equal footing and have the same decision-making possibilities within this entity, a participatory foundation, which is based on not only on a vision, but is committed to implementing this vision. The concept of the park is something we have to do and pursue for the next generations. We will try and use any additional operational tool whenever required. Let me conclude by saying that this is the last of the 5 days, and we've had a dual goal in these days. First of all, to focus on the park and receive the contribution of all speakers from different backgrounds. We had important speakers here that have given us a lot of insights on this initiative and how to develop it. And then we analyzed 5 important dimensions of the park. We started with the legal entity that has to be put in place by the end of the year. And we talked about the requirements of those that will be part of the legal entity, certain standards that have to be ensured, because we will be a park of Mediterranean lifestyle, and we have to guarantee all these requirements and standards within our area to be consistent. The other day we talked about our larger community of the Mediterranean lifestyle. Well, we had 5 great days finally in presence. Yesterday, we talked about the promotion of intangible culture and top quality local products. And today we're here to talk about how to build a Mediterranean lifestyle. We have asked all of you, the universities, the academies, the schools, in order to discuss together the topic of training, which is at the basis of forming a community based on the Mediterranean lifestyle. Mr. Walter Tesauro has joined us, so please come up here. He's just arrived. And then I'd like to hand it over to Mr. DeSantis. Please, over to you. The floor is yours. Hello, Walter. I'll take your seat. Let me start and warm up the engine. I'm really happy following the first 8 sessions that we've had. You know, the spaceship of the park is about to land. It was a tough meeting, but from the human standpoint, it was beautiful. We've all expressed the best of ourselves without too many rituals. Another very important day is waiting for us, and then we will wrap up. Today, I must say that I'm very happy to see so many people that I hold in high esteem. For example, Giuseppe, he's like a saint. He's always busy in challenging things. You know, you have to be a saint to work in university at the moment. Giuseppe Disclafani is really an expert in this. Let me now say something about the topic of today, training and research. Well, they are most important if we want to promote this idea of the park in a period when everything has changed for good and evil. Complex changes are taking place and people are becoming aware of this. The other day I went to an assembly of farmers and agronomists, and I was really very happy to see that they are very much aware of the situation. I think there has to be a change because there are some disruptive aspects of industrial farming that have to be changed. And in spite of this, we were able to survive thanks to industrial farming, but we have to do some conversion technologically and technically. We have to sow seeds for the next generations. It must be a revolution, but a bit different from the green revolution of the 50s. When we say training, we mean education, research, I mean, really everything that has to do with educating people. What have we done in the past days? We have listened to testimonies, experiences, and also we've listened to speakers of great intelligence and skill. I've seen many friends surprised in front of Professor Zamagni, who's an 80-year-old boy, so to say. He is a very smart person. He was able to express how to strike a balance between the private sector and the public sector, while at the same time we need the necessary explosion of the civil society, of the organized civil society and the third sector. You know that a cooperative competing with 300,000 multinationals, you know, is like a hero. You know, I call everyone a boy from 100 years of age downwards. I always tell my older brothers, you have to do as writer Camilleri and survive for another 25 years. Some of them are geniuses, taking with them the memories of the past century. Professor Butera mentioned exactly this, and I would like to reiterate this. He is a hard scientist, but he wrote a book with a mix, an extraordinary alliance between scientific culture, hard scientific culture, experimental culture, and the best of humanistic knowledge, especially in the last chapters of this wonderful book. He has dealt with complexity and with some degree of know-how. We have somehow, or we've been brave enough to compare his book with the Book of Saints, Laudato Si. So the Book of Saints and the Book of the Wise. Then another 80-year-old boy, perhaps one of the greatest geniuses in Italy, Professor Canfora, will make a contribution as well. He is a great genius and knows a lot about the Mediterranean area. And then we've had revolutionaries of the revolutionary people like Fernand Braudel, who's an honorary citizen of many places in Sicily. Just a suggestion now. This project of ours, which is very humble and popular, is understood very well by humble farmers. Others among us are so specialized that they take a Nobel Prize on frogs, for example, but they lose sight of a unified reality. I'm referring to culture, universities. You have to be able to master specialization, otherwise it becomes destructive, as we witness in the very bad public debate on the pandemic that we're going through at the moment. I hope God forgives us for the scientific confusion we have all around us. Now, in order to put the problem in a context, I think we need the universities, the realms of education. We have the warriors, the academic warriors of our times here. You know, culture is like breathing. You know, it's not like being cultured or uncultured. That would be a stupid distinction. One of the pillars in our movement, Mr. Petrini with Terra Madre, aims at rejoining academic culture and popular culture. This is an effort which he also made in his books. It doesn't mean that there has to be a conflict between the two. There has to be a combination. How can we possibly pursue a Mediterranean diet called dieta without the memory of the humble, of the university warriors, and certainly we need a scientific and educational pride. We always start from scratch. Professor Camphora, you write in an aphoristic way a treatise in 100 pages. You wrote 3 books on what the ancient people have taught us, the Mediterranean cultural and physical heritage. If we call it the first park of Mediterranean lifestyle, then we have to agree on what this is. Someone from the north of Italy might ask you, or someone in Place Vendôme in Paris might ask you, what do you mean by Mediterranean lifestyle? We know what we mean, but perhaps we need to find an agreement on some essential points. And then, of course, all possible spin-offs are possible, but at least we have to agree on the trunk of a tree, and then we may have variations in the branches. Let me refer to this point, but I'll come back to this soon. So my idea is that we need a scientific basis. I see many young people here, students, peers. They are amazing people. They will be a surprise. There will be a driving force to make Sicily even greater in the coming years. So the memories of the Mediterranean by Fernand Braudel and the 4 books by Professor Camphora are a must. And also the Laudato Si encyclical and How to Face Complexity by Butera. We have to reconstruct the points that are really at the core of our work, the unifying points, the gravity center of our work. I will now make a short reference to a myth. We have an alibi. Intuitively, we say we have this knowledge inside us. But let me add that, of course, Mediterranean diet is a world mix. Well, potatoes were not originally grown in Palermo, you know, or corn, for example, and many other products. We mentioned this several times. The Mediterranean diet is the result of international mixtures and admixtures. Food is the result of many movements of goods. Let's try and combine our food knowledge with some tides, some hegemonic torsion worldwide. So the three basic products, wheat, oil, and wine, that are at the center of the Mediterranean diet. We have to rescue these products in terms of quality, otherwise they will be lost. There's a battle to replace our extra virgin oil with soy, etc. It's a criminal act. Yesterday, we talked about defending these products in a quasi-military way. This is the importance of Mediterranean diet. We've received lots of products from the East, from China, through the Arabs. I think we have to secure these products. We have to defend them. Furthermore, we have to go beyond the myth, because, you know, the Mediterranean idea has become a myth. Well, if someone asks us, we have to say that we should speak our language in this park, but we have to talk to the Chinese, to anyone. We will do this also visually. Lucenzo yesterday told us about part of this trail. You know, I'm thinking of Greece now and the invention of the cities. Regeneration was very important. They invented history, politics, for good and bad, in a violent way. They invented politics, and then Fidia, you know, all the rest. But, well, sorry for being rhetorical. You know, I was trained, I was very good at school, I got very good marks, I studied a lot. You know, you're told that there are universal rights, universal values, and you have to implement those values, but it's not always like this. Our origin is Athens, Sparta, but that was Hitler's model. So we have to really consider history carefully. What's the lesson we can draw from this? Conflict. You know, Athens is politics, political conflicts. And the main conflict was about who was a citizen and who was not. 5,000 citizens, 100,000 slaves, then women. And the true topic was dominion, rule, and freedom. What's the relationship between one of our heroic farmers and the food multinationals, the terrible ones that have exploded after 2007, because many speculators after the subprime crisis resorted to agriculture. So it's, you know, sometimes the hell and the heaven are more interesting than it seems. Back to training. Training has to be done in families, in parishes, in universities, in schools, and I'm referring to the diet, to the dieta in Greek. We have to go to all schools and train. Universities have to be our reference point. and Walter. These points have been thought of already for the park. Jesse yesterday said that all this has already been thought about for the park. Please be the protagonists of this initiative because it's for our children. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Grazie Peppe. E così comincia.
Thank you very much, Pepe. Thank you, Beppe and Francesco. They are our travel mates for this adventure, which started some years ago. They wanted to be one of the team members from the very beginning. They've given me the role to speak and facilitate networking and Mediterranean lifestyle development. Why this? Because in these days it's been days for celebration. We've been celebrating and we've been celebrating as we do in birthday parties. And you, next to you, want the members you love most. And actually, in these days, we've been celebrating because next to us, there were people we wanted to share with our ideas, the seniors, as Beppe calls them. I'm speaking about the people who were committed and who really believed in these ideas and wanted to go towards this direction. I'm happy too, and this is a celebration for me as well. Beppe said many things, and I'd like to say a few things before switching to institutional greetings. Networking, training, raising awareness mean referring to relationships. We are here because we were born out of relationships. Human beings cannot exist without relationships. We are relationships, and part of Mediterranean lifestyle is generated from there. Municipalities, institutions, associations, public and private individuals have made alliances, agreements. These are alliances to build, to set up, develop, and generate change. Well, I was born in the middle of Sicily, where the community of Mediterranean lifestyle is existing. So I was nurtured, I was raised with this transpersonal cultural founding values. So it's easy for me to see them, to acknowledge them around me. It's important to have epistemological, theoretical approaches and open the way for change.
Per fare questo è necessario fare riferimento a una scienza con coscienza. E quindi...
But we need science with awareness, with conscience, and this is why I'm referring to my family, to my community, but also to my masters, to my mentors. And I'm very happy the park wanted to manage to welcome many of them. So thank you so much for this significant moment, because this is a park we built by training and raising awareness daily. We too learned many things because we need to speak a common language and to have interfaces and connections at different levels. I come from the Madonia area at the Pietro Domina School. It's a high school for teachers, we were teaching farming once a week because the teachers had to know the context where they were living. We lost this school, this high school, and it's been some years now. We don't have new students. Many things have changed. We need to lay the foundation for anthropology, and training is the best way to go. Now, let's switch to institutional welcome, and I'd like to give the floor immediately to Mr. Nene Mangiacavallo, the president of the University Consortium in Agrigento. Please, you have the floor.
Organizzatori, illustri relatori, signore e signori, anche quelli che sono collegati via streaming. Io come prima cosa devo manifestare un grande imbarazzo misto a viva preoccupazione, derivante dal fatto che dopo 3 straordinari interventi non è assolutamente facile prendere la parola.
It's not very easy to take the floor after these statements. 2 questions are spontaneous. What am I doing here? And what should I be saying? Because so many things have been mentioned. Excellent people have been called upon, and I'm not an excellent expert, and protagonists have been not so young people. I'm just 65 and I feel embarrassed. As Beppe De Santis said, I'll try and speak as a warrior, and if you allow me, I'd like to express some remarks, considerations, observations, and I'm going to greet you all on behalf of the board of the Empedokle University Consortium board. I know it's late and I shall switch to considerations and remarks. I need to express a duty and pleasure. So first of all, thank you for inviting me and the consortium I chair in a beautiful framework. This is not the first time for me to be in this theater, but it's a beautiful place, I must reiterate. I must appreciate express appreciation for all the things that have been done, not just the councillor Nicoletti and the municipality council, but all the people who had this intuition, this commitment of creating the park, which is the object of this meeting. I'd like to go back and connect to some considerations Beppe De Santis expressed. He is flying high, and it's not easy for me to get to his levels. He was referring to hell and paradise or heaven. So to go back to Dante and make a reference to what was mentioned in the past days, the glory of the mover makes some areas shine. Yesterday and in the past days, this area was shining, and I hope I can partly contribute to one of your observations, Beppe, which is the boost not to lose connection with the rural areas, the rural context that we have the obligation to serve. And I'd like to thank you because you're giving me the opportunity to implement our mandate from our charter. We do not want to deal with the management of teaching as a consortium. Instead, we want to develop the so-called third mission. We want to contribute to development, which is not just cultural or educational. We want social, economical, and civil development of our community, of our territory. In global village time, we cannot just focus on the parochial boundaries and borders, while the meaning of the network is important, and the network should not just extend to education and training. We should focus on the Sicilian identity, which has been represented in a magnificent way in the past days. We are warriors as well as protagonists of the territory, and with an appropriate survey, we tried to plunge into the reality, traditions, and history, and the needs of our territory. We drew up an educational project which has the objective of promoting existing contexts and at the same time provide an occupational development for all the youth who, pushed and driven by different sources, are forced to leave Sicily and go somewhere else and go abroad. So the consortium in Agrigento has and plays this pivotal role. We are speaking on training, planning, and the practical implementations. All the bases are there. 2 days ago, together with the students from the consortium, we went through these, the rational basis that led you to develop the park. Not only are they confirmed today by cultural assessment, but they must further be taken into consideration for international organizations supporting our thesis, our theories in line with the Mediterranean lifestyle. I'm not just referring to UNESCO, I'm referring to FAO, the World Health Organization, and this perfect connection between scientific culture and humanities is the ideal basis on which we can trigger all those facets and elements Councillor Nicoletti mentioned. Mediterranean diet, lifestyle, a concept which is combined with the physical aspect, the role, the value of food, and the expression of a scientific element. Mediterranean goes beyond geography. It is the acknowledgement of prestige, authoritative approach for the Mediterranean basin. It is the perfect balance between scientific culture and humanities. If on the top of this we add the value of identity, the respect for tradition, and the value which is acknowledged and should be gender equality. That's just one woman here. This Mediterranean lifestyle is related to women, and they can hand down these habits, these customs to younger generations. It's also the pleasure of being together at lunchtime for celebrating all that craftsmanship well embeds, is well focused in this logic of being Mediterranean. As consortium for the university, this is what we are doing. We want to have an impact on the community, not so much in the teaching educational approach, in knowledge transfer. We want to pave the way for a social and economic development. We thought about referring to existing contexts, all those things that revolve around the Mediterranean lifestyle. And in our community, there are hotel and tourist high schools, and which are a reference point, not just for Agrigento. We need to promote and increase the value of the trainings and then work on it at national and international level, and then create a Mediterranean school for tourism, a higher education school for tourism, which does not have the only the theoretical approach. This school should have special facilities and systems aiming at a practical vocational training for those who will have to hand down these traditions, preserve history, and continue a lifestyle which is not just made up of food. It's instead made up of a healthy living, healthy perspectives, and a well-being. In November 1960 in Nairobi, UNESCO included the Mediterranean diet in intangible heritage. There was a physiologist of Minnesota who stated and confirmed that the Mediterranean diet, through studies confirmed by the 7-country studies, and highlighted the basic difference in survival time between the Mediterranean peoples and the peoples from the rest of the world. So well-being, health, culture, tradition, customs, and economy leads to something important developed by Mr. Nicoletti, the value of increasing the value of farming, craftsmanship, fishery, and tourism. Mediterranean lifestyle is often associated to the vision, the view of beautiful beaches, shining sun, clean environments. We have the duty to develop our commitment on the community on this. And dear Pino, we are already working on that. The CEFAL project has been started and it's in cooperation with the cultural sphere from the Tunisia universities. As for the resilience plan, we've introduced the Ankara project to promote Sicilian customs and habits in line with archaeology. We are waiting for a feedback. With Tunisia, for instance, not only do we have exchange of knowledge as for excavation sites and archaeology. 15 days ago, a team from Tunisia came to Sicily and they focused on the Valle dei Templi archaeological wealth. Maybe Some people do not know that the archaeological park in the Valle dei Templi in Agrigento has enabled private individuals to produce olive oil, preserve fruits with a special label. They're going to go beyond the Mediterranean boundaries. The sea is not a dividing sea as it happens with migration. It is a sea which is uniting both shores. A special curriculum, a special track of business economy will be included in the university, and there will be a special curriculum for hotel and tourism studies. We are working on that in connection with a new track, a new curriculum that seriously consider the wealth you are referring to, food and wine, which are important not just for our produce, but also for the economy. We are trying to promote vocational training courses with the support and contribution from the regional ministry for training and education to qualify, train staff that can be useful and an irreplaceable tool in this growing path described and outlined by Councillor Nicoletta. We got two presidents from two authoritative university consortia. I do hope that in this sector too there'll be another lively, fruit-bearing cooperation. We do hope we can implement the synergism, and I'm speaking on behalf of the others too. We are available to cooperate in a noble, precious and useful project for this community. Today, there's much we can do. But if I go back to the poet I was speaking before, Dante, we hope we can do many things practically without just mentioning words. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution, and thank you for having submitted this very important project. Honey, almonds, wine, olive oil. That's a basket which is made up of 12 different produce from farming. I know the project very well. I know the creators of this project. Slow almond was the interpretation with the Mandala in Fiore celebration. You know, is an important festival with blooming almond trees. It's a project revolving around fantastic views, and it focuses on the practical dimension. This is going to make a difference. Even technical high schools for tourism are going to work on that. So these further connections will be easily made. Now the floor to the president of the University Consortium in Caltanissetta, lawyer Mr. Walter De Sauro.
Good morning, everybody. It is true that Caltanissetta is my hometown, and with reference to this, I must say that I personally experienced the birth of this park at the university consortium that I am heading because of Mr. Nicoletti and Mr. De Santis visiting us. You know, initially you thought we were Jehovah's Witnesses, right? I have seen great enthusiasm in Beppe De Santis and also in Mr. Nicoletti. They know the area very well. Mr. Nicoletti and Mr. De Santis informed me of the contents of the project. I've been the president of the University Consortium since 2020, but unfortunately, the pandemic stopped our activities somehow. But in this time frame, as board of the consortium, we have always tried to follow the needs of our area. I'm speaking about our area because I'm clearly part of this project. The project is a very good one, thanks to the activities carried out by Mr. Nicoletti and Mr. De Santis, who traveled all our region talking to various entities so that they would fall in love with this project. And they were very good at doing this. The University Consortium had the task to create the context in which this initiative would fit. Training and implementation of relevant university courses. I see that we have other consortia represented here. For example, the one of Agrigento with Mr. Mangiacavallo. We work with Giovanni Di Maida, together with them. And our Chancellor and your Chancellor last week came to Caltanissetta with the Councillor and appreciated this very much. We have a degree course in agricultural science and technologies. But unfortunately, and I think this initiative also aims at informing and making young people aware of the fact that it's all about culture, society, growth. In a way, we complain that in this degree course, there are not so many students. They don't like these subject matters very much. But with reference to a better life, to a Mediterranean lifestyle park, our products, top quality products, regional, local products that should be more advertised with better research and techniques. As was said by Mr. Mangiacavallo, we also obtained funding for some degree courses. I must thank you because thanks to a consultant you have in Agrigento, we were assisted for the presentation of the degree courses, and we were able to get funding. We will now implement some executive projects, for example, e-commerce for wine and food. We've involved the various associations, Confesercenti, Confartigianato, Confagricoltura. I must say that if we talk about ideas and projects, when we meet people on the road, not much is accomplished. In our consortium in Agrigento, we have adopted a different approach. Anyone who had ideas was asked to come to the consortium to talk about those ideas. We were able to implement this method, and whenever there was a possibility to present these projects, we did that. We looked at these projects in synergy with the topics that have to do with the Mediterranean lifestyle. We have important products that are not very well known, not very much advertised. But there's no interest on the part of young people to study those products and investigate them further. You know, what comes from the soil produces life. But since we have a low number of people who have enrolled in the degree course in agricultural technology, we know that there's not much interest. Apart from science and technology in agriculture, I think this degree course should be extended to the whole agri-food industry, because this is very important in relation to the project of the park. There would be great synergies with that. Probably this will lead more young people to consider this type of education, this degree course, which would be also instrumental to avoiding the migration of young people, which is a problem here. With this project that was really very important nationwide, a project that we have taken responsibility for because we are the leaders in this project, where Caltanissetta has committed itself as a city and as a municipality. We have to work in synergy, as was said before, in order to open the way to training and cultural growth on an innovation basis. Because if we don't have this, we will go nowhere. So many people represent excellent examples from this area, but all this has to be transferred to the young people. To avoid that these remain ideas only. I was talking about this with Professor Medini last week, and I believe it was a comforting exchange of ideas. We exchange lots of ideas with the universities. Honorable Lagalla is also a very attentive councillor, and also the Commission on Culture is concerned with this. But Massimo Midiri, the newly elected chancellor, is very open and also inclined to decentralization of culture. Caltanissetta and Agrigento should not be considered as branches of the university. Caltanissetta and Agrigento will be universities to their own right. So the courses, the degree courses, will have to be implemented and promoted in our universities as well. We have to investigate after these 5 days. And again, I would like to thank the councillor and the municipality of Caltanissetta. He is the majority shareholder in the consortium, together with the Chamber of Commerce, the province CEFPAS, and ASP. The mayor and the municipality as a whole have been highly operational, inclined to growth, together with all their people. The council, the municipal council, and all those that are part of the municipality. The idea is to find places for additional training opportunities, for example, schools. This was a sort of panacea to me, thinking of growth and expansion. Similarly to Agrigento, together with the municipality and another 2 entities, we have submitted a project, 60 million euros, worth 60 million euros, focusing very much on research. This is a plan within a project within the recovery plan. You know, research is fundamental. The project we have submitted with the municipality and with other organizations, it is highly ambitious indeed, but it is driven by this spirit. By the end of December, Minister Carfagna said that the Agency for Cohesion will decide which projects will move on to the negotiation phase. In other words, by the end of December, we will know whether we are allowed to proceed to negotiation. That would be a great achievement. You know, the culture of tradition, innovation, generativity relies on cultural growth and on the implementation of growth among young people. We have to create the conditions for young people to stay here so that they don't have to go elsewhere to study. We are addressing young people in particular. I must be honest. Well, I can't say we have to keep them all here, because going abroad, studying abroad is highly fashionable, so to say. But those who can afford go and study elsewhere. Those that can't must be able to study here if they're willing to pursue their studies. The agri-food business the culture, the traditions, the innovations. I mean, they open up many opportunities. They can be trained in this direction, as was said before. Through training, young people can integrate in this world, and we're highly responsible for this. I feel this responsibility on me. Right from the beginning, I knew about this project. I shared its importance together with the mayor, Mr. Nicoletti and Mr. De Santis. As the president of the consortium, my task was to identify ideas, demands, requests, and implement everything through the activities of the consortium. Our intention, our desire is to work synergistically. And really, my responsibility is to respond to the local needs with the help and assistance of the University of Palermo. We have opened the university building to all. There was a meeting of Assostampa this morning. There was another one of Lega Ambiente. We're open to all the associations because showing that there is a cultural point of aggregation leads young people to consider approaching the world of culture. It's not only about the conventional university courses, but also the future ones. Those that will have more relevance to the park. Agricultural technology, the agri-food industry. By the way, there will be a new law on degree courses at university. The tendency is to implement courses that interact. They're not an end in themselves. For example, it will not be a business management course only, but it will be together with other courses that have to do with the economy and trade. It's right because young people can choose in a much easier way. Well, you know, our jewel is the degree course in medicine, which has a numerous clauses. Of course, we have 10,000 applicants and only 800 can enroll. We need courses on a broader basis so that young people can attend and develop their ideas. Once again, I must say, I'm willing to participate in your activities, continue working with you, and also work with the other consortia from Sicily so as to build further critical mass. Thank you. Thank you. Caltanissetta is a fertile ground. We have presented waiting for the expo here in 2014, and then the fair trade basket in cooperation with the Rotary Club. The School of Agriculture and the School of Medicine have always worked together here. And also, as was mentioned by the Chancellor before, we need a new student-centered university that makes people passionate and responds to the needs of young people in the area, so that they become aware of the values and opportunities linked to being born in this area. Well, let's move on with the university consortia. Mr. Pinuccio Lavima, the president of the Ragusa University Consortium, will come up here for his welcome address. Thank you. Thanks to all speakers. Thanks to all those sitting here and also those connected online. After all that has been said, I think I should restrict myself to institutional greetings only. But first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Nicoletti, whom I have the pleasure to know. And also thanks to my dear friend, Pepe De Santis. We're linked by high esteem and friendship. This goes beyond any other consideration. Together with Beppe De Santis, we have already ventured along the path of Mediterranean diet. We've done this with the diocese of Ragusa. Yes, it was a rebirth period or moment. And apart from welcoming you on behalf of the institution, of my institution, the University Consortium of Ragusa, I would like to add that perhaps we are the smallest university consortia here. We have only one school, the School of Foreign Languages in Ragusa, Ibla, which, however, responds to certain needs. Consortia proved to be highly attractive. We have 1,200 students approximately, which is not a low number. And think about it, 40% of these students come from the province of Catania, 30% are from the province of Ragusa, and 10% from neighboring provinces. This shows that there is great interest. The school in Ragusa has generated a lot of interest in young people, and it's a school of excellence, the School of Foreign Languages. I became the president of the consortium last February, even if I was appointed much before that. I took my mandate in February and I immediately asked myself a question. In other words, what is the current role of university within this area of the province of Ragusa? But of course, this would apply to all other areas. What is the interaction? What is the integration between the needs of schools, of companies, of businesses in the various areas? And what is the answer that the university can give? Of course, I do agree with the president of the University Consortium of Agrigento, who says that as a consortium, we should be limited to interacting with the local area, and we should provide proposals over and above the teaching activities which are taken care of by the university. So starting from this idea, as is usually the case when you are given a certain mandate, I tried to pay institutional visits to the various institutions, local institutions, etc. And thanks to that, our consortium started to perceive what was going around. We started perceiving the ideas of the businesses, of the institutions, and what they thought a university consortium such as mine would give them. I mean, at those meetings with the institutions and businesses, I tried to take the most. There were lots of such meetings, and we have really gone deep into our relationship. The message which came from these meetings was immediately taken up by our reference university, Catania, and its chancellor, and also general manager or general director. So they positively reacted to a request of ours, saying that we could increase our educational provision. We're about to define this. We've almost come to a final definition. The faculty has to have a dual aspect, and I'm referring to a business economics school. It should not be a replication of the schools already available in Catania. This would be meaningless. What we would like is that the business economics is a faculty which relies on the needs, on the local needs. So there will be 2 years, a first level, plus 3 years more sectoral studies. In the province of Ragusa, the agri-food industry is a milestone, something that we rely on a daily basis. And the Mediterranean diet shows witness to this. The agri-food industry is linked to tourism and cultural heritage. When we submitted this project of extending our educational provision, something happened which surprised me in a positive way, because we were immediately contacted by businesses and above all by schools. Next week, I think on Thursday, I will meet all the representatives of the schools, hotel schools present in our region. I will also meet the representatives of the agricultural institutes and also technical high schools. On that occasion, we will discuss, and I will talk about our experience, and also I will talk about what we have said this morning here. I think this is the right way to go. On the other hand, dear Beppe, you are in love with the Laudato Si encyclical by Pope Francis, and Pope Francis invites us to take a journey. Pope Francis, thanks very much for the seminar with the bishop. It was the starting point. And since Pope Francis invites us to follow the values and principles that characterize Scouts worldwide to defend the universe, I think that we have to pave the way. We have to pave the way not only within the consortium, but also at the level of the heart and the universe. And it is within this spirit that we can interpret the wonderful idea of Beppe De Santis, the municipality of Caltanissetta, Mr. Nicoletti. It is really, theirs is really a great project, but we are the founding soul of this project. Taking inspiration from the other colleagues of mine who are also presidents of university consortia, I believe we should consider this topic next time we meet together with all the university consortia from Sicily. I'm really available to help you and assist you in this project, which is an idea we're very passionate about, and we would like to implement it together with you. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you for your contribution, which comes from an area I like very much, I cherish. The local action group for the Barocco, and then this has been the first province which has implemented the farming network of quality, and this is going to be a model for other communities and territories to follow. So this is focusing on an area which is rich and has much to share with the others. University of Catania, Mr. Correnti is connected online. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not being there with you. Rector Priole and Professor of Applied Sciences, would like to greet you all. All these concepts are important concepts we deal concepts I like very much. We deal with the Mediterranean diet, and we are going through these changes. The project, which in these days has been especially important, and for which I would like to thank the municipality. Colleagues have been far-sighted. I've had the far-sightedness, spoke about a combination of elements, including human resources. As for diet, the scientific research for the Mediterranean diet, about 2,000 individuals have been recruited and included in studies with questionnaires to analyze eating habits All the studies we carried out show that the more adhesion and compliance with the Mediterranean diet, and we're speaking about the nutritional values, the typical choices, olive oil, saturated acids, the choice of meats, those who are complying with the Mediterranean diet had a lot of benefits, less cardiovascular risks, and less diabetes and less oncological risks. All these diseases are revolving around the pathologies of well-being. And then speaking about the changes in eating habits. The crisis of the Mediterranean diet is underway, not because this diet is wrong, but because it's not the real Mediterranean diet people comply with. Unluckily, the media are conveying the wrong message, and sometimes even in some academic world where research seems to be focusing on other areas. This coding mistake is increasing the prevalence of those diseases. And if we're speaking about authoritative studies, and we know the best regime for benefit on health in the long term is the Mediterranean diet. Unlike hypolipids, glucose diets, which can provide benefits, but just in the short term. This allows us to translate and transfer the messages, which seem to be only on theoretical books. And now we can re-experience and re-implement them. When we are teaching our students, we have applied the nutrition teachings and lessons. We start with nutrition, the active principles, antioxidants in fruits and vegetables, and then I start speaking about the sharing of food, the concept of environmental sustainability, the respect for the territory and community. They are more fascinated by the topic, and they develop further interest. We speak about nutritional values, just single food. Sometimes the diet is seen as a punishment, but the diet is not just a punishment. For many people, diet is a suffering, sacrifice, getting rid of things you like. Well, the concept of diet is something wider, more extended. It's not a restriction, it's enjoying food in a different way. If you do not use large portions, for example. So it is as if we switched from applied nutrition to many other nice things which sometimes are forgotten in classes, and then students fully understand what the diet is. Of course, we are going to invite them to see the park. It's a great opportunity from the cultural, scientific, educational viewpoint, from a socio-economic viewpoint. So a good connection for the farming, food approach to eating habits in our community. We are willing to cooperate on behalf of the university and also as a specialized department for nutrition. Thank you for your statement. It comes from a young professional where we got this magical combination of the Mediterranean diet with flavors, tastes, and colors. FAO has chosen fruit and vegetables, at least 5 portions a day with fruit and vegetables. So fascinating young people with the typical things, with the curiosities, unusual things connected to nutrition, learning and growing together is important. So a greater responsibility where you combine the emotional dimension and which account for the great ingredient for success. Now, University of Palermo, Enrico Napoli, Pro-Rector.
Sì, buongiorno. Buongiorno, mi sentite? Sì, la ringrazio molto.
Thank you.
Sono molto
And good
contento
morning. I'm
di
very happy
per
to be able
interessantissima iniziativa. Mi dispiace
to
non poter
attend
essere presente.
this meeting. I'm sorry I cannot be physically there.
Raggiungervi
Luckily, this morning I could not be there with you.
professionali dell'Università
I'd
di
like to
Caserta.
greet you all on behalf of
Io porto anche i saluti personali del professore Mandala.
the University of Palermo as a pro-rector, and I'd like to greet you all on behalf of the rector,
Il
who
presidente
is
del consorzio che
interested in the meeting. The president of the consortium, Mr. Tesauro, has made a reference to the interest that the Palermo University is showing in a convinced and firm way towards delocalization of our activity at the Caltanissetta Consortium and the Caltanissetta Consortium. Mr. Mangiacavallo said this before. There's a commitment from the University of Palermo as well as the Trapani University.
l'impegno dell'Università di Palermo è
The community of the Palermo University is very high
in quelle che
and strong. We want to
certamente Palermo è la sede principale dell'università,
turn this into the focus of the Western Sicily University.
delle succursali sono
We're not speaking about university branches. We are speaking about full university headquarters connected to Western University in Palermo. We've got teaching, training, educational approaches, as well as
università
research. University is all these things together. University
formative, è un'università
that just focuses on education is a university which loses some of its vocation, and its presence on the territory, on the community, must stimulate, must push, boost the local communities, the economic actors,
quindi su questo c'è una fortissima
cultural actors. There's a very close connection we should implement and work upon, as Mr. Mangiacavallo was referring to. The park project we are talking about
veramente
is
di grandissima prospettiva, di visione molto
a
possiamo
large
vedere che in qualche
scope
modo
project. It
vuole
is a
portare
project
a
that
delle forme di subalternità culturale ad altri modelli, cioè
goes beyond the subcultural conditions. It highlights
che riguarda
and builds on the specificities of the
Sicilia, ma probabilmente
territory
Sicilia
in
è
all
il nostro tipo
Sicilian geography and area. Our tourism, our economic system, our cultural development for tourism cannot be the one of other areas. We need to be put in the condition of being able to develop our specificities, our highlights, and I think this is done in a well-focused way. I think universities should contribute strongly. That concept revolves around the topics of customs, traditions, local customs. But if we focused only on this, we wouldn't be able to curtail all the energies in the community. Before, you were referring to the number of young people moving towards other areas. And future projects are cancelled or forgotten by the new generation. So to preserve, keep and protect these things with these young people, and then project them internationally by combining the local customs. So we should be able to combine them with modernism, research, innovation, and this means implementing cultural production on the topics of biodiversity, agribusiness, as well as the care for individuals. In the park project, there's a wide wealth for cultural models, recreational areas, anthropological facets. All these things are combined together in a network, and this concept is a fundamental concept. From this viewpoint, I think we should make a big investment as a Sicilian university. Each Sicilian university should see them as a polycentric universe. They should be able to be everywhere in Sicily. We should interact more. In the past, we had some debates or competitions among the Sicilian universities. We know that competition can be a positive value. However, Sicily needs to promote cooperation among the different universities, so not just polycentric universities, but universities that cooperate more closely. A network of Sicilian universities would be the dream condition. From this viewpoint, your project is a project that helps this process and goes on the high number of villages, the promotion of tangible and intangible sites included in UNESCO's World Heritage List. This is the tool our activity must revolve around. Today in Palermo, with the new governance as of the 1st of November, the objective is to increase the value of this approach, and I'm convinced that the other actors on the territory share and welcome this revision, this new approach. In the 2-3 coming years, we should be able to grasp all the opportunities for replanning and redesigning the future. We're going to miss a big opportunity. All our commitment is shown and is there. I'd like to thank all the organizers and enjoy you all the best for the proceedings. Thank you for referring to team being in an alliance and then being in a network is an important synthesis. The MESA, Mediterranean Diet and Health, with the scientific coordinators, Professor Tiziano Caruso, Dr. Karuba, they've marked important steps forward for the integration of some of the most active components from the Mediterranean diet today. 6 of the founding fathers were from the Palermo University, and then we were involved also in activities of the botanical gardens in Palermo, and this was so for 5 years. So it's a magic place where skills, competencies, institutions, education, everything is intertwined. So knowledge, employment, they're all together. 6.1 measure tropical fruits. We are part of that action plan. So education, knowledge, and promoting communities, outstanding. Thank you. I think we can give the floor to Pino Di Sclafani for his welcome speech on behalf of the regional councillor. Thank you, Francesca, for giving me the floor. Roberto Lagalla has asked me to greet you all on the Regional Council for Education and Vocational Training, and also his personal greetings. And I'm happy because I'm happy to share what Mr. DeSantis and Mr. Nicoletti started. We had some preparatory meetings for this fantastic initiative. We exchanged the data, opinions. So thank you once more for inviting me. What is the role of the Regional Council for Education and Vocational Training as vis-à-vis the Mediterranean diet? Following the Second World Conference on a Mediterranean Diet organized in Palermo in 2019, the municipality set up a technical table on cooperation made by 3 regional councillors, the one for health and the one on education and another one. One of the objectives is to include the teaching of a Mediterranean diet in all schools. We are working on this. We have decided and voted. We are trying to organize the training of teachers who will have to teach students contents on the Mediterranean diet. The second objective is to regulate with the specific rules and regulations hospital and school canteens because then by law the external companies providing food should comply with the Mediterranean diet. So we're speaking about from farm to fork approaches. We're working on the rules and regulations for canteens in schools and in hospitals. This is going to raise awareness in new and older generations, and by doing so, they would carry on using the same food even in their private life. So the regulatory framework will soon be passed. The regional council, chaired by Mr. Lagalla, is also working on projects for the resilience plan. And once we foresee to educate new generations through school canteens, we want to increase the opportunity to have more school canteens. A project has been submitted by the council, 195 million euros is going to be used to extend the time spent at school, which means a high number of canteens in schools. This has been passed, and it's one of those projects included in the Resilience and Recovery Plan. As for new professionals, in another item of the National Resilience and Recovery Plan, I think it's about 435 million euros for setting up training courses in a partnership with companies. This means that training will be outlined and drawn up according to the needs of companies. And this means that the trained staff can be hired by the companies. This will follow on the already recorded success rates for previous implemented projects. There will also be an increase in the number of master courses after university degrees for developing these professional figures and specializing in this area. 305 million euros was allocated for digitalization in schools and high-speed connections so that schools can be connected. The students can connect to the rest of the world. Nene Mangiacavallo was mentioning the opportunity to extend the culture of eating together, sharing the pleasure of eating together. Some US universities, in medical universities, they study also cooking lessons and how to turn raw materials in food. And then following on these experiences, I have an interest for that. And then in General Medicine University, we are including seminars and studying courses dedicated to the Mediterranean diet, and we're also including some cooking lessons on how to turn raw materials food into dishes, because mostly patients ask doctors about what food they can choose to cook. So this is going to be included in the medical university curriculum, and we do hope we can add this to the surgery university curriculum. Being united among universities in a network is a good approach, and this is going to lead to very good outcomes. We are willing to cooperate with all the possible things which falls within our competence and interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've been our host, our guest many times. You're a connecting point between our activities and the schooling system, and also with the Association of Physicians, with great attention and focus on the health topics. Through certain circular letters, we have offered the schools the possibility to set up courses as ambassadors of the Mediterranean diet throughout Sicily. And this was an opportunity to reiterate the importance of the Mediterranean diet, and it was possible thanks to the circular letters issued by the Council. And then another point, in the tables of the canteens, a project was developed, typical products and Mediterranean diet, so that this model becomes the model for managing the school canteens, defining the procedures, the procurement procedures, so that the municipalities know what to buy, so as to buy from local areas, and also allow the young ambassadors of the Mediterranean diet to eat the local products and educate their taste to these special flavors. The theme of school canteens is very important. Michele Carrube, during the FED project, where the Health Council was one of the promoters, but also other councils were involved with Mr. Aguirre's, where they trained many people, many ambassadors. One of the reasons why Sicily ranks second after Campania in terms of childhood obesity is linked to the school canteens and what is offered, because there has been a reduction in the offering through school canteens. I think we should take action on this. And now, after this introduction, we're going to move on to the speakers. I do apologize with Professor Paolo Inglese. He was supposed to be the first speaker, but he cannot be with us. He apologizes because of a family health problem. He cannot come in person, but he is connected online. Before him, however, we have Professor Adriano Stella, who's the coordinator of the Interdiocese Network New Lifestyles. No, he's online. Hello, good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Right. You will be the first speaker because you have to leave later on. That's why we have invited you to speak first. Yes, thank you very much, because then I have to go to Padua. I have a commitment there. Can you tell me how much time I have so that I don't take too much time? Well, you have 15, 20 minutes, right? Very good. Mr. Giuseppe was asking me to tell something about our interdiocese network, which is called the New Lifestyles, and how we were able to build this network. Let me start from my background. I'm a lay person, I'm a missionary. I have a strong experience in the Amazons, and also in Brazil. I spent 12 years there. And I must say that this experience changed my life a lot. And also as stressed by the Laudato Si encyclical, it changed me very much in terms of ecological conversion, especially in the Amazons. I thought that, missionaries tend to provide assistance very often because there are many needs. We see people that are increasingly poor. In Latin America, we used to talk about poor people. Now we talk about impoverished people, because there is a whole system that impoverishes people. As Pope Francis says, these people become marginalized and are excluded. The tendency is to help, but in the wrong way, just providing assistance. So we have to go from charity to justice, to really building social justice. One of the documents that I took with me when returning from Brazil, and there, we also have very good networks, all the church communities, popular movements, and also Pope Francis met them several times. All that has to do with the soil, and you're talking a lot about Mediterranean diet, but there is a road called Campesina, and it's everything that has to do with the land. It's a network promoted by a movement which is very strong in Brazil, those without land. I had proposed a document that I brought with me coming back to Italy, which included a plea. We from the south of the world are asking you justice and no more charity. We want you to create right relations between the north and the south of the world. Now, I've lived here since 2002, 2003, but, there is a lot of charity and mere assistance in our relations as well. For example, we have great poverty here, which is not just economic poverty, but the majority of our people here in Europe, in Italy, do not suffer from economic poverty. like in the south of the world, where the majority suffers from economic poverty. Here we have a poverty of relations, a relational poverty. This is highlighted by the encyclical. Everything is connected. There is a relational aspect that we have to recover and reconsider. I think that the COVID pandemic, especially at the beginning, now perhaps we forgot, but we have learned that human family, social relations are secondary to none. We gave priority to accumulating lots of things in an obsessive form of consumerism. Sociologists talk about the compulsion to consume. Pope Francis says it's obsessive. We forgot the big asset that we have, the asset of relations. At the beginning of the pandemic, through the lockdown, we understood how important relations are, how important networking is, and in general, all the relations. We understood that we are indeed relational human beings. We cannot do without human relations with the others. Think of the terrace and the threshold of our homes. In the terraces, we used to put things which could no longer be contained inside the house, or separate waste collection bins. But now they rediscovered. They are places which connect us. We did everything on those balconies and terraces, concerts, music, toasting to each other. Perhaps we are losing sight of this. We are forgetting about this lesson that we learned from the pandemic. Don't forget that relations are essential. When back from Brazil, I said, now I have to start my mission here, because there is a lot to do in terms of missions in Europe and Italy. And above all, I think we have to help our people give charity only, do welfareism. We have to forget about this welfare culture, because, you know, giving just €1 is nothing for those who have money. You are happy with yourself, but you continue with your wrong lifestyles, harmful ones, with a big impact on the environment. Very young people continue saying to politicians that they just do blah, blah, blah without changing the lifestyles. We have to change lifestyles with a bottom-up approach, from the grassroots to the institutions. As the encyclical says, these lifestyles are not sustainable anymore. They are lifestyles that we have been following every day at private, political, and institutional life. And the encyclical calls us to new lifestyles 35 times. We cannot continue like this, so we cannot continue with this way of living. So we have set up a movement on this. I have this movement in Vicenza. It's called Gocce di Giustizia, Drops of Justice. We have networked with local associations, Vicenza Mondo, for example. In Padua, we have a network called New Lifestyles, etc. And then I was also involved in the church world. In the Padua diocese, they asked me to work out a project, a well-developed pastoral project on the new lifestyles, on the pastoral of the new lifestyles. And that's where the interdiocese network of new lifestyles began. In that year, in 2006, when I was asked to work out this church project, I went around some dioceses in the surrounding areas that had implemented new lifestyles projects already. And from this came the idea of a network. It came spontaneous to me. I said, why don't we join our efforts? Why don't we change our experiences, our initiatives? Why don't we build something together? For example, pastoral paths or trails. And that was the starting point. I was asked to promote this network, and little by little, it spread out very quickly. It was very interesting to see how it spread. It spread in a very fast way from the north to the south of Italy. And then I was involved in your nice region, Sicily, starting from Agrigento. I remember my friends from Agrigento very well, my friends from the pastoral offices that involved me, and they also organized initiatives in other dioceses, for example, in Siracusa, in Ragusa, Caltagirone, Messina. And then I remember very well being in other places, Catania and Palermo, their dioceses. Palermo has recently joined the network and formed a local network of pastoral offices, but they also involved other realities that they have in Palermo, other examples of organized civil society. At some point, an interdiocese network was formed. We had to create areas because it was increasing in size. At the present time, we have the Center North area involving all the dioceses that we have here. And then the Adriatic area from San Marino, which is also, and also the state of San Marino and their diocese are part of the network, down to Apulia, Santa Maria di Leuca, then the Tyrrhenian Sea belt from Tuscany to Calabria, and then Sicily, where we already have 10 dioceses that are in the network. Why is it so important to establish a network? Well, we started by saying we have to exchange opinions, we have to exchange experiences, initiatives, and everything we are undertaking at the moment. So networking meant sharing experiences, sharing initiatives, and knowledge. Well, you know, there is broad knowledge within the dioceses, and also the storytelling, telling about good practices and alternative practices. Why is this important? I mean, it's important because if we want to help people and change their lifestyles, because, you know, the food we eat has to change. We're organizing interesting workshops to make people understand that meat-based nutrition is harmful not just to us, but to the earth, the health of the earth. We have a workshop called the Pyramid of Water, which makes people aware of how much water is used from the moment you sow the seed to the moment you bring food to the table. It's a very interactive workshop. At some point, people discover that it's water that consumes a lot of water. For example, beef, for 1 kilo, 15,000 liters of water. And then a surprise to all is that vegetables are at the top of the pyramid. consuming much less water, and immediately next to vegetables are fruits. We also show them the other pyramid, the food pyramid, which is better known. So the food which is good for our health. At the base of the pyramid, you have fruit and vegetables, while meat is less good for one's health. This is what we inform people about in the network. And telling them about good practices is very important and generates hope. Unfortunately, in the mainstream, you only hear about what is bad. You hear very little about what is good. Instead, we have to tell stories about what is good, even next door. Very often we discover that close to us are a lot of good things. When networking, also at local level, we discover precisely this. So many realities, even small ones that are beautiful realities, implementing very nice initiatives. Networking is a source of strength. Well, yesterday we used to say we have to be together in order to be strong. And now we say we have to network to be strong. The moment you network, you can also implement actions and campaigns which have a strong impact on people with a high educational value. This means implementing a bottom-up change, but it's not just a personal thing to do. It has to start at personal level, but then it must become a community-based effort. That's why it's important to pool efforts. As the interdiocese network, we try and identify pastoral pathways to change with a bottom-up approach. I also wrote many books. The last one is changes with very low mileage, published by Edizioni Paoline. I'm showing there that what we can make small actions on a daily basis, which are possible to all. It's very important for people to understand this, because oftentimes I'm asked, what can I do at local levels? At local level, because people understand that we cannot continue like this, that we have to change. That's why it's important to inform people of possible daily actions that we can all draw benefit from. I'll conclude now. When these actions are undertaken by the whole community, they become very strong, so as to have an impact at institutional level, because the three levels of change are personal, then community, and at community level, you can then change the institutions as well in such a bottom-up approach. Networking means implementing a change with this bottom-up approach, starting from the personal level up to the institutions through a community involvement. When you network, everybody says it is possible to change. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. This change with low food mileage is very important. It's a way of, combining faith and everyday life. It's a way of overcoming the existential solitude and loneliness in an effort to be together in a community. So thank you very much. We're very close to this dimension. It's one of the dimensions. We talked about this in the preparation phase with Nino Giordano, a dear friend of ours, and also Giorgio Lapira, another friend inside the movement, in order to build alliances, create networks, enhancing the strengths and reducing the weaknesses that we all have. Thank you very much again. Professor Paolo Inglese should be connected online. He's the professor from the University of Palermo. Can we hand it over to you?
Salve professore.
Salve a lei.
Benvenuto a Caltanissetta.
Hello and welcome to Caltanissetta. Actually, I would have been very happy to be there with you. Unluckily, my mother is not well, and I do not feel like leaving Palermo because she's in a critical health condition. I give you the floor for your intervention. You got about 15 to 20 minutes. Mr. Councillor, I apologize for not being with you, especially because some of the elements included in the Mediterranean diet are fundamental and parts of my family. Some of my family members are from Caltanissetta. The political, social, institutional, academic worlds are combined. We could be speaking about many different things which are intertwined. First of all, as for the diet, from a conceptual viewpoint, modern viewpoint, is a gift we got from the United States. In the book mentioned by Mr. Mangiacavallo, then Always and then Gifford, the man who wrote the contents for Bob Kennedy, then legal assistance for Bob Kennedy, and then Always was set up. Then in '93, because of typing mistake, invented the pyramid. The pyramid was created by chance, and New York wrote an article. I mean, he wrote an article for the New York and told him he only had a limited space in the newspaper, and then he invented the pyramid. It's a journalistic invention for someone who had to solve a last-minute problem. While today we have a common consumption. The Mediterranean diet is not different from the principles of the other major diets at world level, with a social, ethnic, and farming foundations. I'm speaking about the historical South American diets, Asian diets, African diets. The principles making up these diets were working always as pyramids of the Mediterranean diet, the Eastern Asian diet, and South American diet. They are all based on the same principles, the same different levels of consumption of food. The different things among them is farming, produce coming from farming in different geographical areas. However, all these people, when their diets are drawn by globalization, they try to become a global model and they change the production and distribution systems of food. They have obesity, they develop obesity. 20%, 24% of obese people in Mexico, for instance, and then this clashes with the deep innovation of a global diet. Who is in charge of all this? The redistribution of food global level, and is a fantastic invention of shops selling only food or the packaging changes the rules of the game, and the local diets fail. I was born in 1960, in a moment when at the end of peasants' civilization and at the beginning of a new era, we are the first aware consumers. We will go to bed at 8 in the evening after the official commercials were broadcast on TV. I was born in Palermo, but it's just a legal makeup. I was born in an area which was not actually Palermo. It was an area where inhabitants would not accept the farming origin. I was born in Via Libertà, one of the main avenues. It's an avenue where you cannot see the sea. In 1972, when I was 12, I went to see the historical center. It was forbidden then to go there because it was dangerous. But we were not allowed to see our roots, our origins, which were lying in the historical center of Palermo. We are, however, speaking about practical things. The loss of the sense of identity is important for building a new identity. The historical center of Palermo has an identity. Viale Strasburgo will never have. Viale Strasburgo is a large avenue in the suburbs of Palermo. The fact is that Viale Strasburgo does not have an identity. In the 70s, in the Madonie mountain areas, for birthdays, people were offering pasta with salmon, so they were using modern food and they would forget about the traditional local food and cheese because it was very popular to have tortellini with salmon, which was a new fashionable dish for those years. So we're speaking about the universities of Sicily, 6 million inhabitants in Emilia-Romagna, 6 public universities, 150,000 students, 25% of students who are not from Emilia-Romagna. Campania has 4 big universities, and we've got 3 big universities and some other private universities, such as Cor and LUMSA, which are private universities in Sicily. So the issue of education and training is a huge issue. Enrico Napoli, the pro-rector, a dear friend of mine, mentioned the idea of the Western University campus. The idea is correct, but how can we do that? The president of the consortium said the right things. We need a consortium for research in remote working. Otherwise, we will have troubles. Students who go to Caltanissetta are looking forward to going back home because they do not want to live in Caltanissetta. Young people in Caltanissetta shouldn't be dreaming about going to places where there are more connections, more other things they can enjoy. The other real success will be that local universities, which are delocalized, shouldn't be working just for local students. In Pavia, for instance, close to Milan, many students go to Pavia to study. It's 20 kilometers away from Pavia. It's one of the most ancient universities in Italy, and it has a special character. It is a central university for education at a European level. I cannot imagine a delocalization with the professors staying in the main headquarters, carrying out research on site. This is not delocalization. This is something US universities faced this challenge. I'm speaking about Boston or Davis, Agricultural University. St. John's Valley is the center where it was supposed to be. I'm speaking about the suburb areas of Caltanissetta. In ancient times, it was a center because it was the center of farming, and being in Caltanissetta meant being in the center of the economy. Wealth was everywhere, but the origin of this wealth was Caltanissetta, because that was the cradle of farming. Even mafia has its origins in Caltanissetta, because Caltanissetta was a rich area. How can we turn Caltanissetta into a new center today? History, since the end of the peasants' civilization, this area was condemned, killed. The number of people running away is very high. I personally have 2 children who will never come back to Sicily, so I know this also personally. In my family, before me, there was this understanding. It's not a brain drain. I don't like to call it in this way. This is a drain, a fleeing which is involving all social classes. Each social class tries to improve their condition. So independently of the social class you belong to, young people are going away to preserve the status of their family. On agribusiness, the Palermo University has done a lot of things. Together with Macron at the Palermo University, we organized a master courses. I did this at the Agricultural University. We had a master which is now called Mediterranean Food and Beverage at the Faculty of Economics and Business. When we created this curriculum, we were very young in the creation of this curriculum. We took the agribusiness, technological farming and production to Caltanissetta. There were not enough professors that could make that effort. We could have the top class course in Palermo and the second level course in Caltanissetta. Then it depends on the numbers of students. So was it the case to have students from Caltanissetta come to Palermo? If you have 4 professors available only, what can you do? You will have to force professors to go to Caltanissetta and teach, but the real research activities would have been carried out in Palermo. So we decided not to start the course in Caltanissetta. We opted for setting up a regional hub, which is very powerful today. We had the master course, 2-year master course in English because the companies hiring belong to a world network. This is why we decided to have the courses and classes in English. I was the coordinator for the course for 6 years. A student from Eritrea we have speaks English and French very well, perfectly. And our students do not want to speak English. I'm not fond of foreign languages, I must say. Well, it's not the from farm to fork approach which is going to be successful. Only this approach is not the excuse for protecting the pistachio, the region, Sicily. It's not that. This is not the from farm to fork approach. Otherwise, we'll never be winners. We could do what Trentino Alto Adige did. Ferrari, the spumante, the sparkling wine, is used at Formula One. They came before the champagne. They do it with a second level consortium. The company is just 7,000 square meters. Go to Bourgogne. I went for some teaching classes for a week in a Bourgogne university, and the wine I bought, it produces as 300 and 500,000 euros per hectare. This is their tradition. Tradition comes by building yearly revolutions. Tradition is not inherited, it's built. If you can inherit a tradition, You are dead. Tradition does not mean let's go back to the flavors of our grandmother. The tradition is to create a new Ferrari for the World Championship. This is the new tradition. If Sicilian tradition is just a memory, we are done. We have lost. Who do not do things as the ancestors would do. A new jam, for instance, a new food phenomena are very little things, sushi, quinoa. This is what we get in Italy. If you go to children's birthday parties, the mothers use the poke, they do Hawaiian food, or they eat sushi. This is what they eat. These are traditional food, as traditional as the Mediterranean diet food. And it would be nice to do things that we import poke, and some others should be importing spaghetti. But pizza is such an American phenomenon where Pizza Hut is much more popular than our Italian pizza. So let's get down to work and set up this park. I would be very happy to have this park. We can become the center again. We do not want the suburbs that preserves the grandmother's traditions. We must develop the traditions of two future generations, not even one future generation, but two future generations ahead. So, Paolo, I know there's much we need to do. So use your powerful intelligence that can help us become brothers, starting from Indians. My son in Brussels enjoys ramen, which is Japanese. So Japanese soup, ramen, it's delicious, but this is what my son has in Brussels. So revolution is a new word. Is next Mediterranean diet will be made of cassava, quinoa, or what Africans will take to Italy. However, the nutritional values and principles, the pyramid is the same all over the world. The difference is made by the farming production. Some people grow almonds, some others grow mangoes, some others grow wheat. So growing together is an important dimension. With the Palermo University, we are in a new farmers network, AgriNet, to promote the common agricultural policy and set up this sort of network of knowledge through the common agricultural policy, through ICARO and publishing group. It's also a great opportunity to promote Italian companies in the world. Thank you, Professor, for your intervention. Now the floor to Professor Nicola Perulla, Prorector of Food Sciences in Polenzo.
Ancora il professore Ferdinando Trapani.
Sì, buongiorno, grazie dell'invito. Io
Sono qui in realtà.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me here. I'm here as the Pro-Chancellor, so I'm here at an institutional level, but then since I have also been concerned with all these topics as a scholar of this discipline, I would like to add something, not only from an institutional point of view and from a political point of view, but I would like to focus more on my personal experience. And then I will tell you about the University of Pollenzo. When you are the last but one to speak at this time of the day, one should not repeat things that have been said very well before. Now, if I were to repeat what diet means, etc., it would be useless. It would be just a way to show that I know what I'm talking about, but you would get bored because you've already listened about this several times. I would like to be brief and tell you what I believe is interesting. Everything has been said, more or less, but I would like to highlight a few points. First of all, many of us are concerned about explaining what diet means, the original meaning, diet, lifestyle, etc., and I'll come back to this. Rarely, though, do we ask ourselves about what Mediterranean means, because we take it for granted. We take for granted what is Mediterranean. I would like to suggest something. The concept of Mediterranean should not be just interpreted in a space and physical way, but also in a time dimension, as a concept that has a time, philosophical, and also metaphysical dimension. This was said by the last speaker through different words. I think the meaning is the same. There are so many Mediterranean settings. The so-called Mediterranean diet was not invented in 1950 approximately. It was just the name and the concept and everything that followed. But if you go to Eurasian countries, you find types of nutrition and also nutritional forms and habits that are even more ancient. And the same is true for Central Asia, Japan, etc. The concept of Mediterranean is something which diversifies locally, but it is also an almost universal concept. I like to think, and I like to propose in what I do at my university and also in my books, I like to think of the Mediterranean diet as a way of being, as a way of perceiving things and a way of eating, but not just eating, because another mistake one commonly makes is to talk about Mediterranean diet as food. And then you add lifestyle without specifying what you mean by lifestyle. What do we mean by lifestyle? Let's try and look at it. Let's try to consider what a lifestyle which is consistent with the Mediterranean diet is. The diet, it should be an everyday lifestyle that one adheres to, that one follows. I like to think that we are here in a place which was selected by other nations as their destination. Think of the Greeks, for example. They had very clear principles in mind. I think we could quote many philosophers. Epicurus, first and foremost, because he was very famous in relation to food, and also, you know, how famous his attention for pleasures such as the pleasure of eating food. You know, one characteristic of the Mediterranean philosophy is that idea of simplicity, of being frugal. The word frugal has to be further explained because, you know, it doesn't mean that you suffer. Frugality doesn't mean that you suffer. But in a way, it means being happy with what you have. It means, you know, turning a necessity into a virtue. Epicurus says you can also be rich if you organize banquets with very special food. It's fine, but you must also be able to enjoy simple food, bread and water. In the Eastern tradition, there are many books of medieval Buddhist monks who speak of making big temples with ordinary vegetables and looking for spiritual enlightenment. Buddha Dharma, when cooking, for example, and Dogen, an important monk in 1250, says that in the monasteries, those responsible for the kitchen and for cooking are the top-level monks. And this is extraordinary to us because we've been used to having lower grade people cook for us. And why is it that it's top-ranking monks that cook? Because in order to cook for the other, you have to be superior. This is what Mediterranean diet is and should be. Frugality has exactly this meaning of being open to what nature offers us. Food that can be simple food, even ordinary, not extraordinary food. I liked the fact that you should not necessarily look for the products with a brand or the products with a protected designation of origin. I mean, these are possibilities, but at the present time, these become only commercial labels and brands. The Mediterranean diet must go beyond this. It must be stronger than its branding, which is nevertheless useful. So, pleasure of eating together. This was mentioned several times today. Ivan Illich, a famous philosopher in the 60s and 70s, wrote a book on eating together, on the pleasure of eating together. And there was also a manifesto some time ago, which is called the Convivial Manifesto. Ivan Illich thought that this was an alternative to the mechanical industrial society of his times, which would do things in a repeated way without passion. Instead, conviviality means putting people together, establishing a dialogue and feeling a sense of interdependence, being aware of the fact that what you are doing is never done on an individual basis. I like this comparison with the East. Dalai Lama once said, "What is Buddhism? When you discover that what you are doing for someone else is something you're doing for yourself, this is Buddhism." This is the Mediterranean diet to me. It's not individualistic. It's not made of, rules, presets, calories. I know everybody likes measuring calories, but we have to distinguish nutrition from nutritionism. Sometimes nutritionism is reductive if it reduces everything to measures and quantities, because measures and quantities are something that are too abstract, too general. Instead, nutrition is fundamental. Nutrition means that you get a nourishment and you eat something which goes beyond the quantities, the measures, the calories. It goes beyond because it was made by someone, be it a farmer, a peasant, a hunter, a fisherman, or nature itself, if it's a naturally occurring food. So conviviality is a condition which implies nutrition, ethics, and morality. Kant was not a big expert of food and was not particularly passionate about food, but in his last work, Anthropology in a Pragmatic Way, he gave an example of eating with their people, convivium, and gave this example as the highest form of moral and physical good. I mean, eating well together with others is the expression of this good in Kant's words. So the category of living together. There's another point I would like to mention here because it's particularly interesting. The correspondence between aesthetics and ethics. Well, you might think this is, as our Greek ancestors said before Ansel Keys, who was really fantastic, but he was a nutritionist, a physician, so he couldn't know everything, he couldn't do everything. So much earlier than Ansel Keys, the idea was that what is beautiful is also good. Kalos kaiagathos. The good thing in kalos kaiagathos is usually the moral good. What is morally good is also beautiful, but we can also think of good in terms of flavors. What tastes good is also morally good. In the modern ideology of nutritionism, which dates back to the 19th century, and then the most modern nutritionists know what I'm talking about. I'm not here to teach anything to dietitians and nutritionists. But up to some time ago, the idea was that what tastes good somehow harms you, and what is not good is something you should eat anyway. What is good for health doesn't taste particularly good, but you need it. The our ancestors' eating model is a model where the positive nutritional factors also taste good. It's a matter of reconnecting all this after being split for a long time. What is good and what is beautiful, so morally good, but also tasting good. I don't think there should be a distinction of values. And how can we make people aware of this? Through education and by increasing awareness. When we talk about education and awareness, we venture into a field which apparently everybody agrees upon, though it's a bit difficult to implement everything. As was said before, there has to be a change in school canteens. John Dewey, an American philosopher in the early 20th century, a great philosopher in logic and also pedagogy. He was a great pedagogue and also an expert in aesthetics. So when he was the dean of the university where he used to work, he asked for cooking to be compulsory for his students. We're talking about the 1920s, much earlier than many of the things we're referring to now. So cooking was, in a way, compulsory, in a sense that the students were forced to cooking and washing up, because he thought that these exercises would imply cultural training for these students. Then in the 70s, Ellis Waters invented, I must say, in the modern Western world, in the US, invested the edible school gardens. School gardens where students would cultivate their vegetables. They would touch them, cultivate them, and cook them in turns. I mean, this is a very important educational moment, not simply because you learn how to recognize the courgettes of a certain season compared to the courgettes of another season. Of course, this is also important, but at some point, students became aware of what food meant because they had to do with food directly. I think the Mediterranean diet is something like this as well. It's something which implies increasing awareness through having hands-on experience. Hands-on experience is an educational experience which actually takes place through various strategies. School strategies are important, but of course they have to be followed by family strategies, otherwise they would be too weak. In Pollenzo, we set up a small-size university, which is now about to celebrate its 18th year. It was established in 2004, like the Core University in Enna. This university is focused on food. The 3-year degree courses, the master degree courses, the doctoral courses, etc. Well, everything is centered on food. Then you have interdisciplinarity, humanities, internationalization as a theme. I mean, saying Mediterranean diet doesn't mean you have to be parochial. You can't, tell it, and you can't speak of Mediterranean diet to an Armenian farmer because they discovered it many years ago, much before we did. So really, we have to appreciate the wealth of these cultures on a common basis. Now, what is very strong in Pollenzo is the community experience. It means eating together, convivium. It means knowing each other, understanding that the way you eat is not only important from the point of view of the effects on the body, but also because of the effects on the mind. It's something that people tend to forget. You know, Mediterranean diet, being fit, being healthy. Of course, it's important to avoid cardiovascular diseases, but you also have mental diseases, those due to intellectual laziness. Some studies relate intellectual laziness to some types of nutrition and lifestyles. I mean, scientifically speaking, there's a whole field of studies showing that there is a correlation between the over or the excessive consumption of sugar and lack of criticism, critical sense, etc. So accepting everything which is around you. The food has a very strong impact on the body and on the mind. And there are interesting studies on this today. The University of Pollenzo is a small-scale university where we experiment a way of being together through food. Food is not just the subject of study, of investigations, which would be enough, but it's the way through which people establish relations and talk to each other, not just about food. The idea is that there are moments, for example, meals, studying, food, etc., where food becomes part of daily life. And food encompasses many more aspects. Our students call this the gastronomic bubble, the Pollenzo bubble. It is an experience which lasts from 1 to 5 years. And what really, what the students take with them over and above the contents of each degree course is a sort of glue among them. You know, our numbers are not that high, but this is a bit what Epicurus wanted to do in his garden, the garden philosophy, not just something theoretical where you speak a lot and then everything stays as before, but something which is continuously attempted and experimented in real life, in everybody's real life. And this is possible because ours is a small university with just a low number of people. People can learn how to look at life in a certain way. I like to think that the Mediterranean diet is a way to look at life in a certain way, not just limited to food. Food is one of the main pillars, and then you have affection, care, memory, attention, imagination, and many more aspects. Ability to innovate, for example, and ability to retrieve and recover what used to be far away in the past, and yet it comes back as something that we desperately need. Not always is innovation based on technology. There's also a form of innovation which is not technological. Everybody speaks of technological innovation today. It's important, but we also have innovation in our thoughts, which means retrieving what seemed to be buried for centuries without feeling nostalgic for the past, we try and pay attention to this as well. Thank you very much for your kind attention. We need Polenzo in order for our spaceship to land. 400 partners. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have to say hello to this guy who is from a family where everybody has a lot of genius. Thank you very much. I have a psychological background, so these themes of relations, emotions, and this idea of food being the link between the mind and the food and the body is very important to me. We presented a book by Franco Berlino, The Mandala of Life. And, you know, all these topics are particularly dear to me. This was an input to answer or to react to what Paolo Inglese said. My mother has never eaten salmon. At least she never bought salmon. The only fish was bluefish, usually anchovies. Also because they used to add salt, a salty flavor to the vegetables grown locally, frugal ones with respect for the value of food, the true food, the seasonal food, the one which allowed us to go through famines or crises. My mom was and still is a person who once had a rich guest who wanted to send her waiter to the kitchen. Instead, my mother forced her to eat at the same table as the waiter. This is the culture I come from. This is my cultural background, and this shows you the value, what the value of food should be. This is what we would like to highlight. The importance of food, an authentic, a genuine importance of food. Respect, respect for waste, food waste, respect for the Sicilian culture. There could be no better guest to talk about this than Professor Ferdinando Trapani, who will be our last speaker. He represents the Sicilian culture. Ignazio Buttita will take the floor first. He's the president of the Foundation Buttita.
As for the specific topic and the reference to it, I'd like to extend the topic from food eating to lifestyle, the conception of life. In the title, there's a reference to a network. The Mediterranean lifestyle must be revolutionized by cooperation. Our outstanding colleague mentioned that. He spoke about cooperation. He said cooperation is an essential element. I met him years ago, and when I know how they work there, and I visited those places. There are experiences from different parts of the world, combined together. Maybe they are competing, but they work on development, which is not just economic, but also cultural and ethical. Culturally speaking, the experiences may vary. The cultural history of the south of Italy is connotated by solidarity, a local community level. When there's an emergency, there is a collective solidarity, but not a real cooperation projected in the medium long term. This has been a bad damage, and this allowed those coming from outside to have the room to use their control on the economy of our island. The contribution coming from many cultures, long histories on our island can become a real constructive, positive, lasting factor that can also become a real model. And this is happening. I do not want to be pessimistic. I'm observing this in the new generations. The idea of cooperating together is developing. Being in a network is important. In economy, enterprises, entrepreneurship. Fondazione Ignazio Butita is a cultural foundation I chair, and I know how important it is to cooperate with the others. Since 2005, we started cooperating on a network with Puppets Lab, Sandro Musco's association, and other cultural associations. This is a new way of being together, not in a competitive way. And be aware the competitions existing in our region where everybody tries to get the largest share of funds, and this attitude is even the source of fights on the side of people who try to grasp a couple of pennies. I always try to keep away from this approach. We were rewarded for this. And we know there hasn't been acknowledgement locally, and with the pandemic it's less than so, but nationally and internationally the things you do have a certain importance. Here in Sicily you must always tell who you are and what you do, so I will always be insisting on the idea that being together and relating with one another, even though in the short term it doesn't seem to be important, it seems that we are competing individuals in our difficult context, and we must realize that we live in a dream where Sicilians are in a fantastic region. We are the suburb of the suburb of the suburb of the periphery of the world. Sicily is the suburb region of Italy. Italy is the suburb country of Europe. If you think about infrastructures, the transport system in Sicily, you realize where we are. This is the best image. This is the disconnection. And the impossibility of communicating is the road system in our island. Maybe we can communicate better when the road system improves. Thank you.
Grazie per questo fuoriprogramma. E ora invito per l'ultimo intervento della mattinata
Now,
il professore Ferdinando Trapani, professore dell'Università dei
Professor Ferdinando Trapani, professor from the Palermo University. Thank you very much. Because it's late, not going through the whole presentation I wanted to make. However, I'd like to make some remarks because this concluding day allow me to do so because I'm one of those who believed in this sort of folly and I'd like to relaunch the big question, which is what are we going to do after this meeting is over? The first thing I thought about was a CRESM research where there was a charter. I had a big book with a map where you would see the Mediterraneans all over the world. Some years after, a booklet which was fashionable, the Meridian thought by Franco Cassano. Maybe the idea of the meridian made us understand that geographical configurations are not enough to be able to tell everybody there are many Mediterraneans in the world. Every and each basin has different cultures and people, cultures, but this tells us that our Mediterranean has its own specificity. The specificity is not just lifestyle of food, it's a precise idea of life quality. I'm here as a delegate, the director of my department. The new director didn't know what to involve me in. I come from the classical urban planning. Urban planning now comes from courts, lawyers, carabinieri, public prosecutor, maybe experts in geography, engineers who work on calculations. Urban economists do that, or other experts. Those who are actually experts in just urban planning do not exist anymore. This is why I gave up my profession and decided to dedicate my time at university. So cultural practice is important. At the end of the day, you can use even very old tools such as the urban planning tools. When zoning was created, it was used for racial purposes. So if you think about some terrible origins of these tools, Leonardo Caracciolo, the master of my mentor, would say that urban planning was a practice which was difficult to understand. So the Mediterranean diet can be included in that, which means practicing a culture of life is important. And this park, the concept of park is something I cherish very much. The Mediterranean lifestyle that mirror the quality of life, and then the spatial planning, which is something completely different from urban planning. And this is the quality of the room where the space where you live. If you look at the pyramid, it's a sort of communicative invention. If you look at the countless websites on a Mediterranean lifestyle, you see there are things that can be done anyway and anywhere. If there is a communication in architectural terms, also with respect to planning, some activities of Mediterranean lifestyles get out of the game. So I had proposed to Beppe, and I had done this to the organization of doctors in Palermo. We come from medicine. The city was dying, then the industrial boosting. The city was dying because water was dirty, and then an epidemiologist realized that the problem was water, and he used the cartography to understand that there was a clean water and dirty water. So epidemiological data connected to spatial data. So urban planning should be taken back to where it is. I mean, we should teach this in the medical university, and COVID is teaching us this, the quality of the urban space. We should have the space to live together. Monopoly, the game has the alley is small, is very small. Nobody wants to live in an alley, so it's not worth a lot of money. The Park of Victory has a reference to green and has a value which is much higher. The nice communication by Paolo Inglese when he made a reference to Via Libertà, which is a boulevard in Palermo. The University of Architecture of Venice, the Faculty of Architecture in Venice was one of the first ones, one of the ones stopping first. We are in a logic now where we know that the city is extending. The city is the world, and we learned this from COVID. The space has been compressed, and what happens in a city can happen at the same time in a completely different city in the world. Urbani was trying to explain to me that there was a big difference between globalization, the human evolution, and then the trend of general world development like mondialization. The world development is different from globalization. There are some American laws on safe food which may be useful, but they tell us to be closer to the world and less to globalization, and also get organized as long as we can do that and keep in this dimension of resistance. Medicine and special planning are a reality. In my course of economy, I have the students read a booklet by the United Nations on habitat. They speak about spatial planning and the synergism between these two things. There are urbanization practices which are sustainable, which are within the human sustainability, not just the environmental sustainability as such. We are here, the Interreg brand is not a case. It's here because of things of life, because you are at a crossroads between your friends and my colleagues. Me, Jesse, Marsh, we come from that world and we are connected through Living Lab. For the very first time in Sicily, at our university in Palermo, we set up the Living Lab workshop. We wanted to include the Sicilian region. There were other such labs in Europe. There were the World Founders with the Ministry of Research and Economic Development. From 2008, nothing was left. And I'm finding them back here in this week. The phenomenon was external to the EU Commission. Living Lab now is a world movement. And now the park is connected to the theory of local development. In my presentation, I had a history of visions. The path dependency economic concept. Each of us is what they were before. Each time you think about reversing the economic cycle, you must think about your origin. The history of visions of the development of Sicily is contrasted the history with a lot of expectations, which is opposed by a vision you cannot avoid, risks of hydrogeological dangers and weaknesses. The centers of these two factors lie here where we are now. This is the island without future, we could say. If we don't do anything, we will not find the soil where we can grow anything. And if we do not understand how waters must flow, how we can attribute value to the waters, especially if climate change keeps being dangerous as it is, it's important. So the educational gap is one of those two severe gaps of the region. The first gap is the infrastructural gap. Many of the things you've heard, especially from Paolo Inglese, which do not exist anywhere else, is how to place and move around these things. Here we are running the risk of being cut off, isolated, and this trend is increasing. Then the educational gap is the other condition. At the beginning of this session, speakers mentioned the relaunching of high schools on tourism. I deal with sustainable mobility, and this is related to a possible solution for this type of educational gap and the idea of an objective opportunity of having a network and having hotel and tourism schools as a foundation, including, of course, consortia, and having as a pivot chef pass. Chef pass could be the gluing element for this new educational curriculum or pathway, and that could be the focus of this cultural well-being, as we heard before. I'd like to conclude by saying you heard about Terra Madre, Mother Earth, the city swallowing, gobbling up the world, but the city is becoming the world itself. The children for this Mother Earth is all of us. Let's try to honor, respect the Father, and find all the strategies to get connected to this earth, because without that we would have landslides, water everywhere we cannot use, and we cannot turn the earth into something we can use, and we must always try and respect our mother, and we shouldn't be offending her daily, being disrespectful. Your presentation will be the topic for the first meeting organized soon after the meeting. Now I'm taking the floor to close this session. This very busy session. All the presentations have been very useful, and they'll be used as a reference elements for the development of the park. I'd like to read a poem, Language and Dialect by Ignazio Buttita. A people connected to the chains, take the dresses out and shut their mouth, get the jobs, passports away, the table where they eat, they're still rich. A people is a servant when the tongue is taken away, and in that case, a people is lost and has failed forever. Only in that case. Thank you. We'll resume after our light lunch with the international partners from MDNet and the roundtable. Thank you. Thank you.